What's going on, people? Well, it is that time once again. We are officially 30 days out. Actually, by the time y'all are watching this on YouTube, by the time it goes live, we will be less than 30 days out from the launch of a new generation of game consoles. Both Xbox and PlayStation are going to be debuting new hardware in just a couple of weeks, and I thought it'd be really cool leading up to the launch of these consoles to just talk about the experience going into a new generation of game consoles, because when you strip away all the fanboy discussions about tech specs and whether or not this thing is the new hip anti-consumer trend of the day, there is still a lot of excitement to be had with the launch of a new generation of game consoles. And I'm going to start off this little unofficial mini-series by talking about why I'm excited for a new generation of game consoles. Now, when you look back through the history of gaming, you can sum up the launch of any new gaming console as essentially this: I'm excited for a new generation of game consoles because of all the new games I'll be able to play, because of more powerful horsepower, and that's basically been it for the most part. And it's been like that for the better part of 30 years. But what I think this current generation, the one we are wrapping up right now, did completely differently by comparison to what's come before is that I don't think there's ever been a generation where we have had such a clear, concise winner out the get-go as we've had with the PlayStation 4 versus the Xbox One. I don't really need to remind y'all about the disaster that was the Xbox One reveal back in 2013, but I gotta do it. We gotta do it.
I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
Disaster is not really the words that I would put. It was just a straight massacre. Like, from the initial reveal of that console to when they talked about it at E3, it was just not a good summer whatsoever for Microsoft. And while they've tried their best to roll back a lot of those decisions that were deemed very controversial, the damage was already done. Gamers around the world had already made up their minds that they were not going with Xbox this generation. The fact that they're trying to sell you a weaker console for $100 more, they were packaging it with a peripheral, the Kinect, something nobody wanted, no matter how many times they said it's
going to revolutionize gaming and change the way you interact with your game console.
Niggas wasn't buying that shit.
Hell no, to the no, 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 hell to the no.
And even with multiple price drops, even with multiple patches to fix things, even with them coming out there and introducing Game Pass, the service that keeps on giving with its greatness, it hasn't done much for their sales numbers at all. And if I had to guess, it's due to that initial unveiling, which is why it is so important for them to get things right going into the launch of the new consoles. But before we even tackle what they're doing next generation, let's talk about how this generation in particular, the one that we're wrapping up right now, how this generation was literally a battle between one console that's a gaming system first, and then one console that tried to do everything but gaming, and then retroactively try to make itself a gaming console, which I think is very strange considering Microsoft had the template down right last generation. The Xbox 360, while its numerous hardware defects aside, which nobody should ignore whatsoever, that machine was gaming first. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that the Xbox 360 was the best platform to play games on. You can have your favorite exclusives here and there, but when you're talking about just the ease of use, when you talk about how they basically revolutionized online gaming on a console, when you talk about how they just made the experience so smooth across the board, they really deserve props from that. Compare and contrast that to the PlayStation 3, which, oh yeah, it was a games console. Oh yeah, it was a multimedia machine, but it never really did the whole social connectivity thing very well. There was no type of cross-game chat. Messages took forever to load. The PlayStation Store in general was just such a mess by comparison to Xbox. But the reason why the PlayStation 3 eked out the 360 in the end was due to its stellar lineup of games. So you're going into the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Sony is essentially looking at what they did wrong, and they were basically like, okay, let's look at what Microsoft did right this generation. Let's look at all the good things that they brought into gaming. Let's take out all the bad stuff, and let's just do that, which is basically what the PlayStation 4 was. The PlayStation 4 on release was basically a better version of the Xbox 360, but created by Sony. Whereas the Xbox One I don't even know if that was even a gaming console when it came out. So gamers made up their mind at that point. But what happens when you go into a new generation? A new generation where Microsoft, for the better part of the past couple of years, has been trying to right the wrongs. Are gamers going to react the same way, or could they pull a 180 and actually make it so Xbox is a force to be reckoned with? Which is why I'm so excited about this new generation, because for the first time in, well, 15 years, both companies are doing things completely different in the gaming sphere, but at the same time, they're both making pretty compelling arguments. So let's talk about PlayStation for a second. It should come as no shock and surprise that PlayStation 4 has absolutely crushed it this generation by basically being a gaming device first, and then everything else comes afterwards. Gaming is paramount to your experience with a games console. Pretty self-explanatory, but that's what they're doing with the PlayStation 5. But of course, this is a new generation, so they're going to be trying out a couple of different things. They're going to be testing the water. Sony is a tech company, of course, so they can go out there and mess around with these things like the DualSense controller. It's their new version of the DualShock controller, but they have a whole bunch of new technology incorporated into the controller that, let's just be real about life for a second, is not fundamentally going to change the way we play games, because the way we have played games in terms of inputs hasn't changed since the beginning, but it is a nice little incentive that they are adding in there, in addition to going back and listening to the feedback for the DualShock 4, which one of the biggest complaints about that controller was its horrendous battery life. And from what we've been hearing about the DualSense, it seems like it will have a more substantial battery life by comparison to its predecessor. But the jury is still out on that one, so we'll see what substantial really means. Is substantial anywhere from doubling the previous battery life's capacity, or is it just 2 hours? Who's to say? But for the most part, PlayStation is doing what PlayStation does best, and it's working for them. It's been paying their dividends. Gamers are happy, and I'm excited to get the PlayStation 5. Now moving over to Microsoft. Microsoft is doing things completely untraditional. This is not something we have ever seen done with gaming hardware, at least to a crazy degree, where one of the biggest players in the console sphere, heck, let's talk about it, one of the biggest corporations in the world is back in a console doing Xbox Game Pass. Basically giving games away for free for a monthly payment that is peanuts by comparison to how much it would cost to buy all of those games. So they've got Xbox Game Pass, which has essentially become their subscription style of gaming, where you can play a whole back catalog of games, but in addition to that, you can play all the Xbox Game Studios titles day and date on this service. But it doesn't stop just there. Xbox is going all in when it comes to this ecosystem. We always hear this thrown around, you know, the Android ecosystem, the Apple ecosystem. What does it really mean? Well, in the context of Xbox, their ecosystem is just the brand, Xbox. That's it. They don't really care where you play the games, but provided you play it with Xbox. So you can have 3 different type of gamers going around playing games on Xbox. You could have a person who plays Xbox games on their console at home on their big screen TV, or you could have somebody who's got a really dope ass PC setup. You can get Xbox Game Pass with PC. You can play all those games on PC. The games are cross-play, they're cross-save. In addition to that, there is a third untapped market that admittedly is still in its infancy. It is nowhere near primetime level of, yes, this is going to be the way we play games, but we have streaming via xCloud. Tons of people out there are going to soon be able to play all of the Xbox games day and date through the cloud on their smartphone. And Microsoft is also working to bring that experience to PC and consoles. So if you're a person who, let's just say, you want to check out the next Halo game, but you're not really sure if you're going to be digging it as much as other people, if you could stream that game and save 100 gigabytes of bandwidth, then hey, maybe that's incentive for somebody to get into playing Xbox games. That ease of access. But not only that, Xbox is also offering 2 separate SKUs upon release. The Xbox Series X, which is going to give you the full fat next-gen gaming console experience. But in addition to that, we also have the Xbox Series S, which is their lower budget, lower entry, consumer-friendly Xbox that's targeting a admittedly more of a niche crowd, ranging anywhere from 1080p performance to 1440p. It's still going to play all the same next-gen games, but you get what you paid for with the price as far as that's concerned. But for $299, heck, even if you're just a casual gamer or you're a hardcore gamer, you already have your PlayStation, you're not going to change you buying a PlayStation ever again. But for $299, you can get an Xbox console bundled with Xbox Game Pass that lets you play all of the games in that library, in addition to what they've got coming out in the future, which, looking at all the teams they've got over there, it's going to be a lot of stuff, including Bethesda stuff too. That's a great incentive out there to get somebody into that ecosystem. So Microsoft is really playing the long game when it comes to this. They don't care whether you buy the Series X or the Series S. They don't care if you stream the games or you play them on your PC. If they offer you that game and you play it with their ecosystem, they make money. And that's it. And while we're here, we might as well talk about the Nintendo Switch for a second, because it is still a player in the console sphere. Nintendo, like I always say, I've coined this phrase, they dance to the beat of their own drum. They gonna do things the way they want to, for better or for worse. Sometimes it works out in our favors, and at other times we get...
This is the way the world ends.
But we cannot sit here and deny the smash success that has been the Nintendo Switch. It's made a lot of us a believer in Nintendo again after the disaster that was the Wii U. Me, myself, and I ate a huge serving of humble pie when it comes to the Switch, and I was so glad to be proven wrong, because the Switch is tapping into that untapped territory. The market of gamers who want console quality games playing on a handheld. And for the most part, it's been working out for them really good. But the elephant is in the room when it comes to the Nintendo Switch. What is going to be happening long term? Because the Switch was able to coast by for the past couple of years on its library of Nintendo exclusives, indie titles, and some third-party games that landed on the system through some wizardry such as The Witcher 3. But when you're jumping into a new generation of game consoles where the gap is going to be widening, not shrinking, Nintendo has got to respond in kind. We know there are rumors floating around about a Switch revision at some point, but nobody knows if it's a full-on revision to the hardware where it's going to be much more powerful by comparison, or it could potentially be a new generation entirely. We just don't know. But it is exciting considering Nintendo, even though they've basically adopted that second console mentality where, yeah, we're not going to try to be the most powerful console in the world. We're not going to try to, push the boundaries of online gaming, such as having a, messaging system. We're perfectly content with us doing our own little weird thing and people loving it enough to the point where they sink 400 plus hours into Zelda Breath of the Wild or some other games that they should not be replaying multiple times, yet they still do because it's such a good game. Such a good game. I don't think I'm alone here in saying that the idea of a Switch Pro, Switch 2, whatever they're going to call it, with much better performance, much better battery life, is definitely the dream.
Don't give me hope.
But it's really exciting, y'all. It is so exciting that all three of these companies are finally firing on all cylinders, which we could not say at the start of this generation. It seemed that PlayStation was really the only company that was like, hey, we're making a gaming console for gamers with all this stuff in there. Nintendo was doing their weird shit, and then Xbox was...
And fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Wow. They really tried that.
Who the fuck is this nigga?
Everybody likes to throw out the phrase, competition is good for the industry, which for the most part it is, but you gotta have good competition. You can't just have a bunch of players in there and then you think it to yourself, okay, eventually one of these guys is gonna make something that's even better than the other guy. No, you need to have people who actually want to win this shit, or at the very least, not win this shit, but make them impact, which is what I think all three of these companies are going to do in their own separate way. But at the end of the day, gaming is in my blood, so I'm going to go where the games are. But it is nice to know I finally have incentive to game on all three platforms. It's freaking beautiful. You love to see it. But that's all I got for y'all today, ladies and gentlemen. Post your comments down below on what you think about this new generation of game consoles. Are you excited that all three companies are in a really good position to launch a new console? Which console are you going to be buying first? Whether it's the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series, or you're just going to wait for them to come out with slim models. Whatever y'all are feeling, comment down below and let me know. And for me to you for now, my name is NGS signing out, and like always, I will catch you guys later. Peace.
When I come in the arena.